Hi, my name is Brian Cohen. I'm the Senior Director of Environment and Climate Change at ACDI VOCA, and I'm here today to give you a lightning talk on the subject of integrating landscape thinking into smallholder decision making. Before I dive in, I wanted to give you a quick bio of the NGO that I work for. I work for an NGO called ACDI VOCA. It's an almost 60-year-old NGO with headquarters in Washington, D.C. that works to increase jobs and income and resilience to the rural poor, mainly in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean and Asia. And we do that through focusing on food security, nutrition, market systems development, equity, and of course, nature positive production. That's what I'm really mainly here to talk to you about the conservation side. So why has ACDI VOCA begun to really pivot in this direction of embracing conservation at the landscape scale? It's largely because conservation of natural resources really best happens at the landscape scale. That's because the ecosystem services, be they a water system or a forest, they don't know the boundaries of a forest or a farm. They don't know the boundaries, human-made boundaries. So as such, if we really want to achieve lasting ecological impact and environmental health, we really do need to be operating at the landscape scale. But hold on now. What is a landscape, right? A landscape, firstly, is something that is defined by the stakeholders that live inside it. But generally, a landscape shares biophysical, economic, and or social aspects in common. Examples would be a watershed or a complex of micro watersheds, perhaps a grassland area, a forest area, but it also can be a human-made environmental. There can be human-made environmental elements to a landscape, an industrial corridor, an economic belt, something that economically or something that ties a group of constituents in with each other. Let's unpack a few of the elements of integrated landscape management. The first is to establish a shared vision for the landscape. One of the core principles of integrated landscape management is the need to establish and build trust among landscape actors. We do that through a series of collaborative exercises. ILM tends to be very mapping heavy, mapping intensive. But firstly, you want to define the landscape, as I had described in the previous slide. You want to map that landscape's features, identifying common pool resources, and recognizing that those common pool resources must be used for multiple purposes. You want to arrange also landscape features to maximize ecological health and synergies between stakeholders. What do I mean by arranging landscape features? That might mean agreeing with stakeholders to establish a 20-meter buffer of forest or vegetation along the riverside, or to prohibit farming and forestry at slopes of greater than 10%, or to arrange a schedule by which stakeholders can share the use of a storage facility or a processing facility. You want to make sure that activities are also, of course, happening at the farm level. And at the farm level, the general rule is that each element in a system must serve a minimum of 3 functions. So an example would be a tree in a farm at the farm level. A tree at the farm level has the potential of fixing soil, feeding it nutrients, providing shade to plants and animals under it. But it also may provide its own products in the form of fruits, nuts, medicine, timber, and fiber. You want to promote collaborative community decision making. Collaboration really means that synergies are more quickly identified among stakeholders, synergies of between stakeholders and the use of those common pool resources, and that trade-offs are avoided. But when they're not or unable to be avoided, and that oftentimes is the case, that they be resolved amicably, and that really only happens through collaboration and a progressive buildup of trust. And lastly, you want to make sure that policies and market incentives and finance are geared toward ILM and enable ILM to flourish. And lastly, a slide that really just brings this home is the same slide, same landscape, with a series of numbers associated with a description of what each of these elements within a landscape does, not only does in and of itself, but in unison or in collaboration with the other elements. And so there you have it. That's essentially just a quick lightning talk, and I thank you very much. Bye-bye.